Hello, everyone. My name is Vivian Chinelli. Welcome to this episode of Vegan to Vegan Convos, a platform for vegans to share their story and, of course, inspire others. For those of you who don't know me, I became vegan and an animal activist about 8 years ago at age 65. And since then, I've investigated different strategies that I can use for spreading our message of compassion. In an effort to do just that, I'll be speaking with a lovely young man who I met at a vegan restaurant in Ojai, California, called Hip Vegan. I've also written a book called I'm Not Vegan, but My Cousin Is, Rhymes, Raps, and Other Good Stuff about respecting and protecting animals, our health, and our planet. You can also visit my YouTube channel or my website for resources about animal, health, and environmental issues. I'll put the links to these resources in the description below. But now let me introduce to you our guest for today, Aaron Moore. Hi, Aaron. Welcome.
Hi, Vivian. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. But before we get started, let me just take a minute to tell our viewers how we met.
Sure.
Thanks. We were both sitting at Hip Vegan's counter waiting for our order to be filled. Now, one of my strategies for circulating our message is simply to approach strangers with any one of a number of questions I've created over the years to start conversations. With Aaron, however, for whatever reason, I decided that I would use the most direct question I could think of. And that is, excuse me, are you vegan? Now, it might seem the answer would be an obvious one because, after all, we were at a vegan restaurant. But you'd be surprised how many more pre-vegans I meet in those restaurants than vegans simply because they enjoy the food that that plant-based restaurant has to offer. So maybe I was a little surprised when he said that he had been vegan for a number of years already. Of course, I was thrilled and we began to chat. And now here's Aaron, ready to share his journey with you. So are you ready, Aaron?
Let's do it.
I will shoot some questions over your way. First of all, of course, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Aaron. I am 38 years old. I'm a Navy veteran with 12 years of active service and 1 year of reserve service. I have been vegan for 6 years. I am a full-time college student at CSU Channel Islands studying information technology. I'm a weightlifter, runner, BJJ grappler, and I'm married, and my wife and I have two cats.
Ah, okay. Well, of course, BJJ grappler. Could you just tell us what that is? I have no clue.
Sure. I've always studied martial arts, and I'm currently studying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at Gracie Barra here in the city where I live. And grappling is just a type of martial arts where you are trying to take the other person to the ground and get them to submit using a joint lock or like a choke or strangulation technique. So it's very hands-on, and it's very, very athletic, and it's a lot of fun.
And are you good?
I am getting better all the time.
Okay, that's all we can hope for in life, right? Getting better all the time.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, listen, before we go on, I think it's always really important to define the terms that we're going to discuss. So let's go ahead and define the big term vegan. How do you define veganism or vegan?
I've always been comfortable with and used the Vegan Society's definition of veganism, which is the shortened version of which is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. There's a longer version, but that's the one I use.
I use that one as well. And as most vegans do, after all, that is the definition of it by the group that started this whole concept. So, how does that play out in your life, being vegan?
Um, For me, it plays out as a way to live in accordance with my moral and emotional core. And when I imagine my ideal self or my ideal society, I try to think about what they're like. And in my head, both are vegan first and foremost. That's an easy yes.
Okay. How did you learn about veganism? Was that the, did you learn about anything else before? Like there are folks who are vegetarian, pescatarian, who call themselves plant-based. When did you learn about veganism?
I think my first exposure to vegans in any way was the Simpsons episode Lisa the Vegetarian. Uh, so in that episode, Lisa discovers that she doesn't want to eat meat anymore and becomes a vegetarian, and she encounters the Quickie Mart owner Apu, and he explains to her that he doesn't eat anything that comes from an animal, and he kind of helps her come to terms with other people's choices being different than hers and how to live with it. And uh, but the first time I ever heard the word vegan was when I started meeting vegans in real life. When I got interested in the punk music scene, and I started hanging out with groups of people, some of whom were vegan and who would engage in like animal rights activism.
All right. And your tipping point. So you've heard about
Mhm.
veganism, you've watched it. Were there any movies, any activists? What actually moved you in that direction?
Yeah, so you and I have talked about this a little bit before, and
Yep.
it's really a list of the hits. Uh,
Right.
so I saw the Gary Yourofsky speech when I was younger, and that had a big effect on me. I had always considered being vegetarian to be the right thing to do, and I had been vegetarian at one point, but and my brother has been vegetarian forever, but I wasn't able to make it stick, and I think for the same reason a lot of people have, which is society isn't it's the default in our society is to eat meat, is to be omnivorous. So for me, uh, the tipping point was having been exposed to those ideas and having agreed with them, uh, but feeling like I couldn't go against the grain and feeling like I swallowed the propaganda line that like there's something insufficient about a vegan diet, that you can't be healthy and vegan. That really, I believed that, and it had a big effect on my choices. And when I saw the documentary The Game Changers,
Mm.
I had already seen What the Health at that point and been persuaded by that. And when I saw The Game Changers, I was like, wait, hold on. So there's elite athletes and Olympians and fighters who are plant-based and have been for years in some cases, since birth in other cases, like Nimai Delgado, bodybuilder. And I was like, this is wild. So it's untrue. At least there's some large piece of it that's not true at all. And after that, I finally had, I started eating vegan right away because I was like, well, this is what I always wanted to do all along. And if this can actually be done, then that's a done deal. And shortly after that, I watched Dominion, and which I had always avoided because I didn't want to be uh, affected negatively by it and be upset. And but once I was no longer eating meat, had no more animal products in the house, I took the plunge, watched Dominion, and that locked me in for good. I was like, yeah, there's no way I'm ever going back at this point.
I haven't seen Dominion. Uh, I know of Earthlings and I've heard of
Hmm.
Dominion. Can you just for the audience explain a little bit about what Dominion is and why you
Sure.
hesitated?
Yeah, Dominion is a documentary that is primarily comprised of footage of animal agriculture, and it covers meat farming for cows, chickens, and pigs, as well as dairy farming and egg farming for egg-laying hens. And they really show the ugly truth of all of those industries and the fact that 98 to 99% of what you're going to encounter at restaurants, fast food, grocery stores is going to be coming from that system. And that's the reality of our food system. And I think the documentary was mostly filmed in Australia, if memory serves, but that is it's very similarly handled across the world. The same practices and standards are at work in pretty much every developed country. We all have the same machinery of industry.
Well, kudos to you for watching it. If I ever recommend a documentary for people to watch, I may mention Earthlings, which is just like Dominion, I hear, even though
Hmm.
I haven't watched it, and I'll make sure they understand I've never seen it, but I always recommend that they sit with a box of Kleenex next to them. And that's how I approach that topic.
Yeah,
But
some people need that to make the change.
right, right. You were talking about health,
Hmm.
and you're a very athletic guy with your BJJ.
Right?
As you know, I'm sure you've been asked this question, but where do I get my protein? I seem to hear
Right.
that every vegan knows that if you were to ask a vegan what is the question you've received the most when speaking to people, that would be the absolute winner. So I've never paid attention to protein. I was always thin. I never dieted. I didn't know, as an adult, it's embarrassing. I didn't know what a protein was or a calorie or a carb. I just didn't have to think about it. So for me,
Sure.
making the switch was really easy. I just said, okay, I'm going to be eating healthy foods. I can do that. But for a lot of people, even if they don't really understand what protein is or how much they need, I sense that there's a fear that something horrible is going to happen if you take the leap, so to speak. Can you
Right.
address that a little bit?
Sure. I just got that exact question. I think no, 2 weeks ago. Just 2 weeks
Mm.
ago, one of the guys in one of my college classes, we were talking, and I mentioned, well, I've actually been vegan a long time, and he asked me that same question. He goes, "Well, if you don't mind me asking, how do you get your protein?" And um, I went through search and rescue swimmer school in the Navy as a vegan, and that's probably the hardest thing that I've done in my life. And among a list of lesser accomplishments, that was a big one, and that it wasn't a struggle at all in terms of health and diet. I did eat a lot of food, as everyone does going through something like that, that kind of special intensive training. But uh, what I told the gentleman in my class is, without being snarky about it, I said, "Well, think of some of the biggest land animals there are: the hippopotamus, the elephant, the gorilla, the rhinoceros, and where do they get their protein?" And he just kind of shrugged and says, "I guess plants." And I said, "Yeah, just from plants, from a variety of plant foods that they eat enough, and their bodies take the amino acids in their plant foods and build proteins, and then that they use to build the tissue of their massive bodies. That there's no exact requirement for an animal, even a simian great ape like us or a gorilla, to eat meat in order to build muscle."
Are you convincing?
I think so. I think I over the years have fine-tuned my rhetoric to be ironclad without being um, adversarial or standoffish.
That's great. I know a lot of people think that vegans are standoffish. And all I can say to that is, I don't think we mean to be standoffish sometimes, but when you're vegan, your concern is protecting animals. And once you know what they go through, it's like a desperate attempt to let everybody else know the same so that we can all be on the same page.
Right.
Yeah, so I I'd like to ask you about, besides just what you eat, but in general, has it been difficult becoming vegan socially? And I know you said, of course, as a vegan, you don't exploit any animals. So for clothing,
Yeah,
furniture, there's
sure.
so
There's
there's so
been
much involved in this.
right. It's um it's at times been difficult, but it's always been worth the effort. And there have been times when I've had to make concessions, which falls under the as far as practicable. Being in the Navy, I was already an enlisted service member when I became vegan. So as a result, I already had uniform items that are made of wool and leather, and there aren't replacements or alternatives. So I just made the decision then, when I realized I had to keep these items around, to take the best possible care of them, make sure that they would never need to be replaced. uh, and that's about as much as you can do when you're in an organization that's that large and has strict uniform requirements. Is I was just like, well, let's make sure I never need to buy another pair of boots or gloves or anything like that. And if I do, I'll try to buy them secondhand. But so far, I've taken good care of my own, and I've never needed to replace them.
That's great. And your friends, they've been pretty cool about it.
Yeah, I think people who've known me for my whole life, who knew me before I went vegan, when I told them that I had become vegan, they just said, "Yeah, good for you." And they, I haven't tried to, force anybody else to make any change they don't want to, but
And we
uh,
can't.
no, of course. But I'm always willing to talk about it if they have questions.
And that's why you're here, and that's why I appreciate you. Thank you so much. What do you eat in a day generally?
Very generally, I start every morning these days with a protein shake. So I use pea protein powder and creatine powder and flaxseed and fruit and banana, and I kind of just make up a good protein shake for myself and my wife. And we usually have something meal prepped for lunch. So it'll be like a salad or a pasta salad or like a bowl, like a grain
Uh-huh.
bowl, sometimes a stew or a curry. And that'll all be prepped in to-go containers in Tupperwares, and we'll have that for lunch. And then dinner is usually, um, I would say our go-to is to make a tofu and rice dinner plate. So I'll make some rice of some kind or another. I'll make some preparation of tofu, and I'll make vegetables. Throw vegetables in the oven or in the steamer, and we'll have that together for dinner. And then throughout the day, we always eat a lot of fruit, little trail mix packets with like nuts and seeds. Um, Sometimes a protein bar. There's several good vegan protein bar options. And if I'm still hungry, I'll usually have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a little jar of overnight oats. So I usually keep some prepared in the fridge.
Well, it sounds like everything you're making is pretty easy to do.
Oh yeah, we we've especially lately as grocery prices have gone up, have redoubled our efforts to try to eat as wholesomely but also as cheaply as possible. Try to be nutritious without being spendthrift.
Right. And I have some vegan cookbooks that some dear friends have given me, but I find that I just throw things together and just change them up. Brown rice one day, quinoa another day, and there are a multitude of combinations of just the basic stuff. So it really can be very easy. So I totally agree with your approach in making it just something you pull together and still be tasty
Absolutely.
and hopefully still is tasty for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, I was thinking of making these interviews kind of short and
Yeah.
sweet. And so I'm going to leave you, Aaron, with some final words if you'd like to reach out to anybody, everybody, and just give us some parting brilliance on your part.
Okay. I wish I had prepared something, but no pressure.
No,
So,
no
right,
pressure at all.
I would say if it has ever occurred to you that there is some moral weight to animals. If you've ever, been snuggling your dog and thought about how it's weird that, we love some animals and we eat others, that is worth consideration, and it's worth making the attempt to make a change in your own life and just find out if you can do it. Because the thing I hear most often is, "I could never," and
Mm,
I said the same thing for years. So take it from me, it's way easier than you think. Um, I've never regretted the decision for a moment, and it's been an incredibly rewarding journey. And you meet such wonderful people out and about, and it's an instant sort of camaraderie when you meet somebody like Vivian in the wild, and you're like, "Hey, we both share this ethical consideration for this whole group of the beings on our planet that a lot of people overlook or that society overlooks by default." So if it's ever occurred to you that it's kind of strange that we love some animals and eat others, uh, take the plunge. At least take the next step, and it's worth it.
Aaron, pearls of wisdom for not being prepared for that hefty last last little talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I couldn't have wrapped it up any better. So all I just want to mention to everybody that the documentaries that you mentioned, Game Changers, it used to be on Netflix. It isn't anymore, but I have a link to it in my website. I don't yet have a link to Dominion, which I will make sure I do in the next day or
Mhm.
so. But you did mention in the beginning, maybe I'm going to step back a little about Gary Yourofsky's speech.
Right.
Do you want to say something about why that was so powerful, or should we just let everybody watch it?
I would say people should check it out because in a relatively short amount of time, he really covers the basics of why it's worth ethical consideration. And as part of the speech, I think the video that you host does include the section where he shows some footage
Yeah.
of animal agriculture and just kind of underscores how that's the reality of what goes on. And he makes an incredible case in a relatively short amount of time. And I think it's something everybody should challenge themselves to watch at one time in their lives.
Agreed. And by the way, right before that footage that he shows, if you need to close your eyes because you just can't bear to watch it, but you're happy to listen to his arguments, he lets you know when that 3 minutes is coming up, giving you time to look away and wait until he comes back to his discussion. And also, I I also want to say that this speech is the icon, truly the iconic vegan speech. There are so many of them out there, but this is the I would call the seminal vegan speech. It was translated into 30 languages. So that tells you what kind of an impact it had on people. He was able to inspire millions of people to, as you say, think about it at least, and then to move to that place where I think we all started, which was we were all compassionate children, I think, towards animals, and we got moved away and disconnected, and Gary's just trying to bring us back. So, Erin, thank you very, very much. Are you going to be leaving anything in the notes below? Possibly
Um,
or not.
yeah, we'll work together, and anything that's missing, we'll find a link for, and we'll get it posted below for people to check out.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Vivian. You too. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me.